Let me. Okay. We're ready to go. So let me close the window so we don't hear all this street noise. Wait a second. And just a few things here. Alright. Okay. Let me close the window. Okay, first we'll chant. Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhauti Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhauti Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Munatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhova Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhauti Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhauti Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Manachari Yamuna Tira Manachari Jaya Radhamad Huva Kunya Bihari Jaya Radhamad Huva Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravedikacharya, also Teta, Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Avaya Charanara Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti, Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. It's better. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Sati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kund Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagadatha Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari 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 Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deja Tarani. So Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Salakaya Jakshurun Meditam Yena Tosmai Shigurve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So we're continuing with our study of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're on the 6th chapter of the Madhya Lila. And in this 6th chapter of the Madhya Lila, we've heard about Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya being converted from being a Mayavadi to a devotee of the Lord who had so much faith that he didn't even pay attention to the Brahminical rituals when he was offered prasadam by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became extremely ecstatic because he had saved this conditioned soul from the material energy, number one. And number two, his devotee was going to be back with him in the spiritual realm. Of course, this is a pastime because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is Brahaspati, and Brahaspati knows all this in any case. So let's continue and go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we may finish up this chapter today. And if not, then we will continue tomorrow. So, of course, right now we're in Philadelphia, which is one of the cities in the United States, for those of you who don't know. It's close to New York because tomorrow we have the New York Rath Yatra to attend. And then after doing the New York Rath Yatra, we'll have our class in the evening, probably from the airport. Okay, on that happy note, let's continue. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Just give me a second to get this set up because I'm working on a different computer right now. So every computer has its little kinks to it. Let's see. Okay. All right. That's good. Just one more thing. Okay, ready to go. Okay, we're going to start with text 256 in the Madhya Lila, chapter 6. Hey dvi shloka bhaktakante ramahara sarvabhaumera kirti goshe daka Vadyakara. These two verses, composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, will always declare his name and fame as loudly as a pounding drum, for they have become pearl necklaces around the necks of all devotees. Of course, those are the verses we read yesterday, which Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wrote on two palm leaves sent to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received them, other devotees copied those verses because they understood that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would rip up the palm leaves because he did not like to hear his own glorification. Okay, so, and these are very important verses which we recited yesterday. Sarvabhaumahela Prabhura Bhakta Hekatana Mahaprabhura Seva Bina Nahi Jane Hana. Indeed, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became an unalloyed devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He did not know anything but the service of the Lord. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sachi Sutta Gunadama E Jana E Japa Laya E Nama. The Bhattacharya always chanted the holy name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, son of Mother Shachi, and reservoir of all good qualities. Indeed, chanting the holy names became his meditation. Ekadina Sarvabhauma Prabhu Agayela Namaskara Kari Shloka Parite Lagila. One day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya came before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and after offering obeisances began to recite a verse. Now this is going to be a very interesting exchange between the Lord and Sarvabhauma, showing how much averse Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was to even the concept of mukti, or liberation, if it was devoid of bhakti. Bhagavatera Brahmastavera Shloka Padila Shloka Sheshe Dvi Akshara Pata Piraila. He began to quote one of Lord Brahma's prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam, but he changed 2 syllables at the end of the verse. And here's the verse. But with his change. Tatena kampamsu shamikshamano punjanavatma kritam vipakam ribong vaburbir vidadam namaste jiveta yo bhakti pade sadhya bhak. The Bhattacharya recited, one who seeks your compassion and thus tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions due to the karma of his past deeds, who engages always in your devotional service with his mind, words, and body, and who always offers obeisances unto you, is certainly a bona fide candidate for becoming your unalloyed devotee. So actually you'll see some words. Whoops. There's some words. Hold on a second. That have been changed here. It should be mukti pade instead of bhakti pade. So you'll see why he changed it. And Lord Chaitanya did not approve of his change in the verse. And actually Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. When reciting this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.8, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya changed the original reading from mukti pade to bhakti pade. Mukti means liberation and merging into the impersonal Brahman effulgence. Bhakti means rendering transcendental service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of having developed pure devotional service, the Bhattacharya did not like the word mukti pade, which refers to the impersonal Brahman feature of the Lord. However, he was not authorized to change a word in the Srimad Bhagavatam, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will explain. Although the Bhattacharya changed the word in his devotional ecstasy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not approve of it. Prabhu kai mukti pade iha pataya mukti pade kene pada kitamara hashaya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately pointed out, in that verse the word is mukti pade, but you have changed it to bhakti pade. What is your intention? So, Bhattacharya kai bhakti sama nagi mukti phala bhagavad bhakti vimukhera hayadanda kevala. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, the awakening of pure love of Godhead, which is the result of devotional service, far surpasses liberation from material bondage. For those averse to devotional service, merging into the Brahman effulgence is a kind of punishment. So remember, previously he was a Mayavadi impersonalist. And for Mayavadi impersonalists, merging is the ultimate stage of liberation. So he was now averse to even something that was indirectly connected to his previous realization of impersonalism. In the Brahmananda Purana it is said, Siralokas tu tamasa parayatra vasantihi Sira Brahma sukhe motna daityascha harina hataka. In Siddhaloka, Brahmaloka, there live 2 kinds of living entities, those who are killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead due to their having been demons in the previous lives, and those who are very fond of enjoying the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. The word tamasaha means the coverings of the universe. Layers of material elements cover the universe, and outside these coverings is the impersonal Brahman effulgence. If one is destined to remain in the Lord's impersonal effulgence, he misses the opportunity to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, devotees consider remaining in the impersonal Brahman effulgence a kind of punishment. Sometimes devotees think of merging into the Brahman effulgence, and consequently they are promoted to Siddhaloka. Because of their impersonal understanding, they are actually punished. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya continues to explain the distinction between Mukti Pada and Bhakti Pada in the following verses. Now remember, from our study in the Nectar of Devotion, there are different types of liberation. And there's Salokya, living on the same planet as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Samipya, having the same opulences associated with Lord. Sharshti, having the same opulences as the Lord. And Samipya, Sharshti, Salokya, and Sayuja, which means merging into the existence of the Lord. So the devotee accepts the other types of liberation, because these other types of liberation, living on the same planet as the Lord, Salokya, having the same opulences as the Lord, Sharshti or Samipya, being associated with the Lord, he accepts those because he can perform devotional service in those particular modes. But the Sayuja emerging, he doesn't accept. And actually, as we've mentioned many times before, there is no actual merging. Because when the spirit soul enters into the Brahman, it actually continues its individual identity. It doesn't lose it, but it loses its consciousness. So losing the consciousness is the same in one sense as losing your identity, but that is only for a temporary amount of time until the spirit soul drops out of the Brahman effulgence and comes back again into the material world. So here, let's continue. Krishna Ravigrahaye Sachanahi Mane Ye Ninda Yudadika Karitan Rasane. Say, my glasses on. Say Dvira Dandahaya Brahma Sayuja Mukti Tara Mukti Palanahe Ye Kare Bhakti. The Bhattacharya continued, the impersonalists who do not accept the transcendental form of Lord Sri Krishna and the demons who are always engaged in blasphemy and fighting with him are punished by being merged into the Brahman effulgence. But that does not happen to the person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, because by nature the soul is active and needs activity, and the floating in the Brahman effulgence is not the constitutional position of the soul. Yadyapi se mukti hoye pancha parakara salokya samipya sarupya sharsti sayujahara. These are the different types of liberation which I mentioned: living on the same planet as the Lord, associating with the Lord, having a form like the Lord, having the opulences of the Lord, and finally merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord. There are 5 kinds of liberation: Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, Sharshti, and Sayusha. Salokya means that after, this is exactly what I talked about a few minutes ago. Salokya means that after material liberation, one is promoted to the planet where the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. Samipya means remaining an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sarupya means attaining a four-handed form exactly like that of the Lord. Sharshti means attaining opulences like those of the Supreme Lord. And Sayuja means merging into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord. These are the 5 types of liberation. Salokyari chari yadi haya sevadhara tabu kadachit bhaktakare angikara. If there's a chance to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a pure devotee sometimes accepts the Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya, or Sharshti forms of liberation, but never Sayuja. In other words, if Krishna wants, the devotee will go to where the planet where the Lord's planet is, or one of the Lord's planets, to serve him. If Krishna wants, the devotee will take a form like that of the Lord, particularly the four-handed form, the Narayan form. If the Lord wants, the devotee will be right by his side, and if the Lord wants, the devotee will be given the opulences of the Lord. Because all these different situations can be utilized in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas Sayuja means no service. It's not the constitutional position of the living entity. Sayuja shunite bhakterahaya grinavaya narakavan chaye tabu sayuja nalaya. A pure devotee does not like even to hear about Sayuja Mukti, which inspires him with fear and hatred. Indeed, a pure devotee would rather go to hell than to merge into the effulgence of the Lord. In fact, there's one great devotee called Prabhupada Saraswati who compared merging into the effulgence of the Lord to be hell. He says, Kaivalya, not a kayate, is the exact quote. And then, oh my God, Prabhupada gives the same quote. That shows we must be connected somehow or other to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Saraswati has sung Kaivalyam, not a kayate. The impersonalist conception of becoming one with the effulgence of the Lord is exactly like hell. Therefore, of the 5 types of liberation, the first 4, Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, and Sarshti, are not so undesirable because they can be avenues of service to the Lord. Nonetheless, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna rejects even these types of liberation. He aspires only to serve Krishna birth after birth. He is not very interested in stopping the repetition of birth, for he simply desires to serve the Lord even in hellish conditions or circumstances. Consequently, the pure devotee hates and fears Sayuja Mukti, merging into the effulgence of the Lord. This merging is due to an offense committed against the transcendental loving service of the Lord, and therefore is not at all desirable for a pure devotee. So let me unpack some of the things here. So I did mention before that a devotee might accept the 4 types of Vaishnava liberation if the Lord wants, but he's not interested or asking for any of these things. What does he ask for? According to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mama Janmani, Janmanishvare, Bhavatad Bhaktir, Oi Tukit Hoye. Life after life, just let me be engaged in your pure devotional service. That's all the devotee asks for. And of course, there's one other thing a devotee asks for. He says, not he, but a devotee, that's he, I guess he, she, whatever, says, Kita Janma Hoy Yata Tuya Das. Brahma Janme, Bhatir Mukha Brahma Janme Nahi Ash. He says, I always want to be associated with devotees. That's the point. Even, he said, I'm not interested, the acharyas say, I'm not even interested in becoming Lord Brahma if Lord Brahma is not a devotee. And then you have the statement in the Srimad Bhagavatam, what is it? Narayana Parak Sarve Nakutaschina Bibhyati Swarga Pavarga Nadakeshu Abitulyartha Darshana. The topmost devotee of the Lord, he can go to heaven, he can go to hell, he can go back to the spiritual world, and wherever he goes, he sees all these different locations as equal or the same, because in all those different locations, he is serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in other words, he'll go wherever Krishna wants him to go. And he'll accept whatever opulences that Krishna wants him to accept. He'll accept whatever body that Krishna wants him to accept. He'll accept any planet that Krishna wants to accept, because I'm referring to the 4 types of liberation. He just, whatever Krishna wants. Krishna wants to punish me, Krishna wants to please me, it doesn't matter for a pure devotee. Now, here on the other hand, I got another point. Prabhupada said, it's interesting, that we should want to go back to Godhead. Now, here in this purport, he's saying, the devotee doesn't ask for liberation, doesn't ask to get out of the material world. I'll have to read that again. A pure devotee of Lord Krishna rejects even these types of liberation, in other words, getting out of the material world, but aspires only to serve Krishna birth after birth. So how to balance these two statements of Prabhupada? Well, Prabhupada was speaking not to pure devotees, he was speaking to aspiring devotees. That's all of us. And aspiring devotees need to have some sort of carrot. Oh my God, what is a carrot? A carrot is not something simply for rabbititos, rabbits. Let me just adjust this one thing here. That means they have to have something like, let me give another expression for carrots, with him. What's in it for me? Because when we first come to Krishna consciousness, we do have so many other motives. And we don't have the motive of simply pleasing Krishna, giving Krishna pleasure, and being willing to go to hell. We just don't have that in the beginning. So therefore, to motivate us in the beginning, a devotee has to address Krishna consciousness in terms of his or her motivations. And that's why Krishna says in the Gita, Chaturvidha bhajanti mam. 4 types of people approach me. Krishna understands this. People looking for wealth, people looking for knowledge, people are inquisitive, or people who are just plain old in distress. So that's how to balance these two apparently contradictory statements of Prabhupada, which are not contradictory because they're applied in different circumstances. Like you see in the purport, Prabhupada said, for a pure devotee, he said, nonetheless, a pure devotee of Lord Krishna rejects even these types of liberations. So if you are not a pure devotee, don't imitate one, or else you will have trouble. Just realize, be honest. If you have other desires, be honest with Krishna, be honest with yourself, be honest with the devotees. Come on. If we're not honest, then it's just so much pride. Pride goes before the fall. So much anarthas. Anartha means unwanted things like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, yuck, fear. All right, we'll continue. Brahmeshware sayuja duita prakara Brahma sayuja haite Ishvara sayuja dikara. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya continued, there are 2 kinds of sayuja mukti, merging into the Brahman effulgence and merging into the personal body of the Lord. Merging into the Lord's body is even more abominable than merging into his effulgence. Purport. According to the opinion of the Mayavadi Vedantas, the living entity's ultimate success is to merge into the impersonal Brahman. The impersonal Brahman, or bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord, is known as Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka. Okay, Brahmaloka in this particular context means the place of Brahman. Siddhaloka means the place of perfection. According to the Brahma Samhita 540, Yasha Prabha Brahmato Jagananda Koti, the material universes are generated from the bodily rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yogis who follow the principles of Patanjali accept the personality of the Absolute Truth, but they want to merge into the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord. That is their desire. Being the greatest authority, the Supreme Lord can easily allow many millions of living entities to merge into his body. The origin of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his bodily effulgence is known as the Brahma Jyoti, the light of Brahman. Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka. Now, one thing about Brahmaloka is sometimes taken as the place of Lord Brahma, who is the main guy in this universe after Krishna. And Siddhaloka is taken as a planetary systems within this material world where perfected beings live. So you see these words are used differently or have different meanings in different contexts. Thus, Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka is a place where many spark-like living entities, parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are assembled. Oh my God. Assembled doesn't mean, please don't take this out of context, that there's parts and they're put together and you get one of them. Assembled means it's an assembly that's there. Like we are all assembled waiting for the guru to appear, or we're all assembled waiting for the football team to come out. So don't think assembled means that they are assembled, put together. Because these living entities do not wish to keep their individual existences. They're combined and allowed to remain in Brahmaloka like so many atomic particles of sunshine emanating from the sun. Combined doesn't mean that they merge into each other. That means they combine together and then they float together in the Brahman effulgence, and those particles can float out. I mean, just like sometimes in marriage, you say that the husband and wife, they combine together. The word siddha is very significant. Siddha refers to one who has realized the Brahman effulgence and who has complete knowledge that the living entity is not a material atom but a spiritual spark. This understanding is described in the Bhagavad Gita 1854 as Brahmabhuta. Brahmabhuta prasanatman nakshavshati nakangshati samaksar veshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. What does that mean? It means someone who's realized he's spirit. Prasanat, and then that person is happy. He doesn't hanker or lament. If you're hankering and lamenting, you haven't yet realized your spirit. In the conditioned state, the living entity is known as Jivabhuta, or the living force within matter. Brahmabhuta living entities are allowed to stay in Brahmaloka or Siddhaloka. But unfortunately, they sometimes, which is what I talked about, again fall into the material world because they are not engaged in devotional service. This is supported by the verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam beginning, Ye Nye Ravandaksha Vimuktamaniya, 10-32. These semi-liberated souls falsely claim to be liberated. And of course, in that verse it also says, Vimukti Manina, and also Avashuddha, Avashuddha Buddhaya, they have impure intelligence. But unless one engages in devotional service to the Lord, he is still materially contaminated. Therefore, these living entities have been described as Vimukta Manina, which is what I just said, meaning they falsely consider themselves liberated in their minds. They're thinking they're liberated, although their intelligence is not yet purified. Although these living entities undergo severe austerities to rise to the platform of Siddhaloka, they cannot remain there perpetually, for they are bereft of what? Ananda bliss. Even though these living entities attain the Brahmabhuta stage and realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through his bodily effulgence, they nonetheless fall down due to neglecting the Lord's service. They do not properly utilize whatever little knowledge they have of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not attaining Ananda or bliss, they come down to the material world to enjoy. This is certainly a fall down for one who is actually liberated. The Bhaktas consider such a fall down equal to achieving a place in hell. The followers of the Patanjali yoga system actually want to merge into the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This indicates they do not want to engage in his service despite their knowledge of him, and thus their position is even more abominable than those who want to merge into the Lord's effulgence. These yogis meditate on the forehand Vishnu form of the Lord in order to merge into his body. The Patanjali system describes the form of the Lord as Klesha Karma Vipakashaya Aparam Rishta Purusha Vishesha Ishvaraha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person who does not partake of a miserable material life. The yogis accept the eternality of the Supreme Person. One of their mantras, Sa Purvesham Api Guru Akalana Vachedat. Such a person is always supreme and is not influenced by the element of time. Therefore, the followers of the Patanjali system therefore accept the eternity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet according to them, Purusha Shunyanam Prati prasava kaivalyam sarupa pratishtava chiti shaktiriti. They believe that in the perfectional stage, the conception of Purusha is vanquished. According to their description, chiti shaktiriti, they believe that when one becomes perfect, he cannot remain a person. This yoga system is therefore abominable because its final conception is impersonal. In the beginning, these yogis accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they ultimately give up this idea in order to become impersonal. They are most unfortunate because although they have a personal conception of the Absolute Truth, they neglect to render devotional service to the Lord and thus fall down again into the material world. As mentioned above, this idea is supported by the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, 2nd chapter, text 32. Ruya Krishna Parampada Pata Tata Patanchado Na Trita Yushmadangreha. Due to neglecting the lotus feet of the Lord, these yogis again fall down into the material existence, Patanchadaha. Consequently, this path of yoga is more abominable than the impersonalist path. This conclusion is also supported by Lord Kapiladev in the following verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Oops, let's get the citation again. 329.13. Salokya sarshti samipya sarupyai katvam apyuta diyamanam na grananti vinamat sevanam janaha. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya concluded, even though he is offered all kinds of liberation, the pure devotee does not accept them. He is fully satisfied, engaged in the service of the Lord. Prabhu kahe mukta pade ara arthahaya mukti pada shabde shakshat ishvara kahaya. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, the word mukti pada has another meaning. Mukti pada directly refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mukti. So in other words, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is taking this particular phrase, which Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya objected to because he thought it referred to impersonal liberation. He's showing how it actually refers to someone who takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same words, but just different interpretation. Mukti pade anra se mukti padahaya kimva navama padartha muktira samashraya. All kinds of liberation exist under the feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is known as Muktipada. According to another meaning, Mukti is the ninth subject, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the shelter of liberation. And Prabhupada explains here that Lord Sri Krishna is also known as Mukunda, or he who gives transcendental bliss by offering all kinds of mukti. Mukunda also means one who has a beautiful face like a lotus flower. Anyway, Srimad Bhagavatam is divided into 12 cantos, and in the 9th canto, different kinds of mukti are described. But the 10th canto is the actual center of all discussions of mukti because the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is the 10th subject discussed in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the exclusive subject of the 10th canto. Since all types of muktis reside at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, he may be called Mukti Pada. Dviarte Krishna Kaye, Kene Pata Piti, Sarvabhauma Kaye, O Pata Kahite Na Pari. Since I can understand Krishna according to these two meanings, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, what point is there in changing the verse? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, I was not able to give that reading to the verse. Yadyapi tamara artha es shabde koya tatapi ashlishadoshe kahanana yaya. Although your explanation is correct, it should not be used because there is ambiguity in the word mukti pada. Ambiguity means it can mean several different things. So he's afraid of this impersonal liberation, so much afraid. It's actually said when one has been, let's say, wouldn't use the word converted, but changed or saved from a very hellish situation, then one is subject to what's called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So he's actually experiencing anything related to mukti or personal liberation to be post-traumatic stress disorder, and so he's actually completely averse to the use of the word mukti, even though the word mukti appears in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yadyapi mukti shabdera haya panchavriti rudi vriche kai tavu sayuje pratiti. The word mukti refers to 5 kinds of liberation, but its direct meaning usually conveys the idea of becoming one with the Lord. It's Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya speaking right now. Mukti shabda kahite mane haya grinatrasa bhakti shabda kahite mane hayata ulasa. The very sound of the word mukti immediately induces hate and fear, but when we say the word bhakti, we naturally feel transcendental bliss within the mind. Shuniya Hasena Prabhu Anandita Mane Bhattacharya Kaila Prabhu Tridalingane. Upon hearing this explanation, the Lord began to laugh and with great pleasure immediately embraced Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya very firmly. Ye Bhattacharya Pade Padaya Maya Vade Tanrai Chevakya Spore Chaitanya Prasade. Indeed, that very person who had been accustomed to reading and teaching Mayavada philosophy was now even hating the word mukti. This was possible only by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lohake avat sparshi hema nahi kare tavat sparshamani keha janite na pare. As long as one does not turn iron into gold by its touch, no one can recognize an unknown stone to be a touchstone. Bhattacharyera Vaishnavata ki sarvajana prabhuke janila sakshat prajendra nandana. Upon seeing transcendental Vaishnavism in Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, everyone could understand that Lord Chaitanya was none other than Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Kashi Mishra Hari Yata Nilat Shalavasi Sharanala Ila Sabe Prabhu Pade Hasi. After this incident, all the inhabitants of Jagannath Puri, headed by Kashi Mishra, came to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Se Sabakatage Kariba Varnana Sarvabhauma Kariyache Prabhura Sevana. Later I shall describe how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya always engaged in the service of the Lord. Yaiche Paripati Kari Viksha Nirvahana Vistariyage Taha Kariba Varnana. I shall also describe in full detail how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya perfectly rendered service to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by offering him alms. E Mahaprabhu Ralila Sarvabhauma Milana Ihaye Shradakari Karaye Shravana Jnana Karma Pashahaite Vaya Vimochana Achide Milaye Tanre Chaitanya Chadana. If one hears, now you know you were reaching the end of this chapter because you get this Shruti Pala at the end of the chapter. Shruti Pala means like there's a benediction given to anybody who's read a particular chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter of the Bhagavatam, chapter of many of the Puranas. You have this Shruti Pala, which means the fruit of hearing. So this is the fruit of hearing this particular chapter. If one hears with faith and love these pastimes concerning Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meeting with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he very soon is freed from the net of speculation and fruitive activity and attains the shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Shri Rupa Raghunatha Pade Yarahasha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kai Krishna Dasa. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya-lila, 6th chapter, describing the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So let's begin chapter 7. I think we'll just read the chapter summary, and we won't go on to any of the verses, and then we'll take some questions. Chapter 7. The Lord begins his tour of South India. In his Amrita Prabha Vacha, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarizes the 7th chapter as follows. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the renounced order of life in the month of Magha, January, February, and went to Jagannath Puri in the month of Phalguna, February, March. He served the Dola Yatra festival during the month of Phalguna, and in the month of Chaitra he deliberated Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. During the month of Vaishakha he began to tour South India. When he proposed to travel to South India alone, Sri Nityananda Prabhu gave him a Brahmin assistant named Krishnadas. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was beginning his tour, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave him 4 sets of clothes and requested him to see Ramananda Roy, who was residing at that time on the bank of the river Godavari. Along with other devotees, Nityananda Prabhu accompanied the Lord to Allahalanath, but there Lord Chaitanya left them all behind and went with the Brahmana Krishna Das. The Lord began chanting the mantra, Krishna, 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 Hey. Of course, there was more to that. Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rama, Raghava, Rakshamam, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. In whatever village he spent the night, whenever a person came to see him in his shelter, the Lord implored him to preach the Krishna consciousness movement. After teaching the people of one village, the Lord proceeded to other villages to increase devotees. In this way, he finally reached Kurmasthana. Wow. I've been there. While there, he bestowed his causeless mercy upon a Brahmana named Kurma, cured another Brahmana named Vasudeva, who was suffering from leprosy. After curing this Brahman leper, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu received the title Vasudevamrita Prada, meaning one who delivered nectar to the leper Vasudeva. So let's end here. Alrighty? So stop sharing and we'll take some questions. Maybe we'll try to end a little early since I have to prepare for a very early start to tomorrow's day because I have to take a train to New York in the early morning. All right, let us allow you to share, to ask questions. Hold on a second. Okay, who would like to ask a question? I'm allowing you to ask questions. Anybody?
If anybody doesn't have a question, I'll ask it to Maharaj.
Well, let someone else. You asked a lot of questions. First.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Maharaj, like here you were describing the other 4 muktis, and but in those 4 muktis, aren't the jiva serving the Lord?
Yes, the jiva is serving the Lord. So here's the point. The devotee doesn't ask for those types of mukti. The devotee says to Krishna or prays to Krishna that whatever you want, wherever you want me to go, Narayana Paraksarve Natkutashana Beviti Swargabavarga Narakeshu, etc. You want me to go to heaven, you want me to go to hell, you want me to go to the earth planet, you want me to go to the spiritual world. Do you want me, if you want me to have Sarupya Mukti, if you want me to have Sharshti Mukti, Salokya Mukti, Samipya Mukti, I'll accept it. But I don't want any of those. In other words, the devotee is not asking for them.
So will it be counted in devotion? Sorry.
Yeah, the devotee is not asking for those types of liberation, because basically all those different types of liberation mean that the Lord is being asked as the order supplier for the devotee's desires. But the devotee simply wants to be the order supplier for Krishna's desires. So the devotee had, let me clarify it further. The devotee has no objections to getting those four, but he doesn't want them or ask for them. But if Krishna wants them, let's say if Krishna wants you to have a four-armed form like him, then the devotee will accept it. If the devotee wants, if Krishna wants you to have the opulences like him, that's service. It's just, so in other words, the impetus for getting those four types of liberations has to come from Krishna for a pure devotee, not from the devotee. Does that make sense?
Yes, Maharaj. So I still have a confusion that, so will those four stages be considered under bhakti, or bhakti is completely only when you are doing it in the Golok? Or
No. Those four stages can also be prema bhakti. You can be a pure devotee and have those or any one of the four or all four of those types of liberation. They're not disqualifications from pure devotional service. However, the devotee only accepts them when the Lord wants the devotee to accept those four.
it's clear now, Maharaj. Thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise, the devotee will not ask for them. The devotee, that's why Prabhupada said the devotee does not want them. The devotee simply wants to please the Lord. And if it pleases the Lord for the devotee to have one or several of those types of liberation, then the devotee wants them. In other words, the only thing a pure devotee wants is to please the Lord. And if it pleases the Lord for a devotee to become a demon, the devotee is happy. Like in the case of Jai and Vijay. They became demons in order to have these pastimes with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then, anyway, so then they desired to be demons. But normally we wouldn't desire to be a demon. But if Krishna wanted us to be a demon, to fight with him, then our desire to be a demon would be actually in line with the Lord's desires. But anyway, the main point is that a devotee simply says, Mama Janmani Janmani Shvare Bhavatad Bhakti, a pure devotee. Says, Mama Janmani Janmani Shvare Bhavatad Bhakti Ahayituki Twaye. Let me serve you, or serve you purely life after life, wherever you want to send me. Whether it's heaven, hell, or whatever. Or four types of liberation. But a devotee never asks for those four types. A pure devotee never asks for those four types. I hope, is that clear?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, here's some questions in the chat window. Let me just see. First one, Jai Radhika. To me, mukti means to be free from the three modes of material nature and not becoming one with the Lord, as mentioned, as another potential meaning of mukti. Yeah, mukti means liberation. But you can't have mukti without bhakti. There's a trick. Because you can't be free from the three modes of material nature because Krishna, Surya, Sam, Maya, Haya, Andhakar. The definition of Maya, or illusion, or the three modes of nature, which function under the illusionary energy of the Lord, is the absence of Krishna. There's this Bengali verse, Krishna, Surya, Sam. Actually, Prabhupada loved this verse, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also loved this verse very much. Krishna, Surya, Sama, Maya, Haya, Andhakar. That Krishna is the sun, and Maya is the absence, is a shadow, basically. And sometimes it's described that illusion is on the backside of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in other words, Maya means that which is not in this particular context. It also means energy, it also means mercy. But in other words, the absence of Krishna is automatically illusion. What was that verse? Rite ritam napratyeta chatmani tadvadyad atmano mayam yatabasha yatadamaha. And that is one of the Chatushloki verses. If one sees something without any relationship to Krishna, know that to be Krishna's illusory energy, which is like a reflection that appears in darkness. In other words, it's illusory. A reflection or a shadow in darkness, or a shadow, has no substantial reality. So, anyway, so therefore, you can't get liberated without Krishna. Impossible. Because you can't get freed from your self-centered conception. Even in the, of course you could say, well, you can go to the Brahma Jyoti, but you can't get freed from yourself, considering yourself to be the center, the most important, unless you actually take up Krishna consciousness. And you can't get liberation even from the three modes permanently unless you're a devotee. Because unless you are a devotee, then ultimately you fall down from the Brahma Jyoti. Prabhupada, actually I was reading today, where was I reading? Oh, I was reading in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita today, where Sanatana Goswami was describing this sort of liberation, this mukti, to be like being asleep or being freed from pain. In other words, it's not a positive thing. In other words, there's no Ananda. Ananda's there in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Bhagavan realization has Satchit and Ananda, all three aspects of the realization of the Absolute. So you can say, I want to be free from the three modes of material nature, but you can't. You can't be free from the three modes of material nature unless you're attached to Krishna. In other words, you're either attached to Krishna or you're attached to Maya. You don't have another choice. I'm sorry. So, anyway, so mukti also can mean, you become free from the three modes of material nature because you take shelter in Mukunda's lotus feet. Mukunda, like you have the same thing. Mukunda. Mukha. Okay. Gurudev, does the devotee lose devotion if they're given Sayuja Mukti? Prabhupada actually just commented on that. Prabhupada said he actually mentioned that if a devotee is given Sayuja Mukti, if you remember the purport we just read, he said the devotee is getting punished. Any devotion you have is never lost. Let me make that clear. Krishna in the Gita says, Swapamapyasha dharmasha trayate mahato vayat. But let's say you are executing, based on what Prabhupada said in his purport, let's say you are executing Jnana Mishra Bhakti. Now, you may not know what that means. There's two types of impure bhakti. One is called Karma Mishra, and the other one is Jnana Mishra. So Karma Mishra Bhakti is executed because you're serving the Lord and you want some fruitive result for it. Just like you go to the Satyanarayan Katha and you pray, my dear Lord, please give me this, give me that. That's, Satyanarayan Katha. Most people worship God for something gross like that. My dear Lord, Om Jaya Jagadisha Hari, Swami Jaya Jagadisha Hari, I need more money. Oh, Swami Jaya Jagadisha Hari. Anyway, so that's Karma Mishra Bhakti. And Jnana Mishra Bhakti means you're worshiping the Lord for liberation. You want to get out of the material world. So, Prabhupada comments in the purport that we read previously that if a devotee is given that sort of, let's say, sayuja mukti, that means he's being punished by the Lord. And my assumption is that means that devotee is a mixture of jnana and bhakti. So here's you want liberation. You're going to Krishna for liberation, my dear Krishna. Get me out of this material world. I mean, let me give you an example. When I first joined the Krishna conscious movement, I really had a desire to get out of the material world. That's for sure. So before I would take rest every night, I would pray to Krishna that please kill me and take me back to the spiritual world. And don't let me wake up the next morning. I guess brahmachari life wasn't that bad. It actually was quite nice. But I was just so much immersed in this idea of mukti at that point. I said, And so then Krishna never fulfilled my prayers, thank God. But had Krishna done that, it would have been a punishment, and I would have learned my lesson after a few quadrillion years, come back to the Earth planet. So thank God Krishna didn't listen to that. Okay, why is association with devotees not considered a form of liberation? I mean, it depends on what you mean by liberation. Liberation means freedom, like Prabhupada said. The four regulated principles are regulated principles of freedom. So if you mean freedom, yes, liberation. But, like these words like mukti or liberation and things like that can be understood in different contexts. That's why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not approve of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's changing the verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. No one has the right to change the verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yes, association with devotees is a type of liberation. That means freedom from association with people who are not Krishna conscious, which is like a fire, a cage of fire, lions and tigers. Satsangachage Vaishnavachar. I like to associate with devotees because they cook prasadam. So yeah. So let's not get too linguistic about all this. Liberation could be understood in terms of impersonal liberation or liberation. You could say Vaishnava liberation can mean being free from bad association, because actually it's in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It says Nirmana Moha Jitta Sangha Dosha, which is really interesting. Avyatman Nicha Vinibrita Kama Twandwara Vimuktar Sukhaduka Sangya Gachanchimuda Padam Avyam Tat. That verse, 5th verse in the 15th chapter of the Gita. It says, Nirmana Moha, to be free from illusion and false prestige, one should be free from illusion and false prestige. And then the next expression there is Jita Sangha Dosha, liberated from bad association. Means free from bad association. So in that particular concept or a particular context, then liberation is not a bad thing. Just don't become... The reason Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was reacting so heavily to the word mukti is because of his PTSD. Most of us don't have that PTSD. But we do understand that a pure devotee simply asks the Lord to serve him life after life in any condition that the Lord wants. Narayana Parak Sarve Nakutashna Bibhiti Swarga Pavarga Narakeshu Alpitulyartha Darshana. Heaven, hell, liberation, or not impersonal liberation. A devotee will not accept impersonal liberation. The Lord will not ask him to accept impersonal liberation. The only time a devotee would get impersonal liberation is getting punished because he's engaged in Jnana Mishra Bhakti. And that Prabhupada indicates that in one of the purports, which is really interesting. It's the first time I noticed that in the purport in this particular part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, we have time for one more question. Anyone want to type a question or ask a question? Oh, here's a typed question. Here we got a typed question. Normally, a person coming through Nityananda Prabhu got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but in the case of Sarvabhauma, he got directly. Any reason? Yes. Who was his brother-in-law? Who was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's brother-in-law?
Gopinath Acharya.
Yes, Gopinath Acharya. Got it. So, by the mercy of a devotee, one gets the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Gopinath Acharya was actually like the Siksha Guru of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Gopinath Acharya, just kept preaching to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and by the mercy of a devotee, and the devotee is a representative, is considered representative of Balaram, of Lord Nityananda. The statement is, what is it? Nayamatma balahinena labwa. Nobody gets the mercy of Krishna without the mercy of Balaram, and then also Balaram hoila nitai. So yes, it's not that to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda you have to talk to him personally. You got to just talk to someone who represents Lord Nityananda. Not just talk to them. You got to take shelter of someone who represents Lord Nityananda. I mean, I'm summarily getting the mercy of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the reason is because I got the mercy of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Simple as that. Okay, I think we're going to end now. We'll be at Rath Yatra tomorrow. We may be posting some videos or something like that, but hopefully I think we're going to be able to give class probably from the airport tomorrow evening, but that's up to Krishna. But we're planning to give class same time, same station. Thank you all for joining us. All glories to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.